It was just after midnight when my phone buzzed on a nightstand. At first, I thought it was a work notification, maybe an email from my boss or some random app alert. But when I saw her name flash across the screen, my stomach sank. Jessica, my wife. I rubbed my eyes, half asleep, and opened the message. It was short, blunt, a single line that tore through me like glass. I found your Reddit history. I'm disgusted. We're done. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. My mind couldn't process it. Done? Over? Just like that? I stared at the message, reading it again and again, as if the words would change the more I looked at them. But they didn't. They just sat there on the screen, heavy, final, unforgiving. My chest tightened, not from panic, not from sadness, but from something else, something colder. Because instead of exploding in anger or rushing to defend myself, I just sat there, silent, still, thinking. Most men, in that moment, would have blown up. They would have begged, pleaded, called her nonstop, demanding an explanation. But I didn't. I typed a single word, one that would confuse her, frustrate her, and maybe even terrify her. Cool. That was it. And then I put the phone face down on the nightstand. I could already imagine her reaction, staring at her phone, waiting for more, expecting me to unravel, to chase, to grovel. She wanted chaos. She wanted me on my knees. But instead, I gave her silence. Because deep down, I knew something she didn't. This wasn't the beginning of the end. No, this was the moment I'd been preparing for, without even realizing it. And while she thought she had the upper hand, she was about to learn the hard way just how wrong she was. The funny thing is, when people hear stories like this, they always assume the husband must have done something awful, something unforgivable. Maybe I was hiding some terrible secret. Maybe my Reddit history was proof of some dark side. That's what she wanted everyone to believe. But the truth was stranger and harsher. What she found wasn't some betrayal. It wasn't some hidden life. What she found was a reflection, the reality of who she was, and the sacrifices she pretended not to see. But we'll get to that. In that moment, all I felt was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I leaned back against the pillow and thought about the years behind us. The countless nights I'd stayed up late coding, taking extra freelance gigs just to make sure she could chase her dream of becoming a doctor. The vacations we never took. The dinners I skipped. The stress I carried quietly because I believed in us, because I believed in her. And now with one text, she'd thrown it all away. Or at least, that's what she thought. The truth was that single message, I'm disgusted, we're done, wasn't the end. It was a spark, the start of something she would never see coming. Because while Jessica was busy trying to end our marriage with a text, I was already rewriting the story in my head. And trust me, my version wasn't going to end the way she expected. After that single word, cool, the room felt different, quieter, colder, almost like the air itself was holding its breath. I lay there, staring into the darkness, and memories began to unspool in my mind like a film reel. Because to really understand what happened, you need to know how we got here. You need to understand Jessica. You need to understand me. And you need to see the sacrifices that built the very foundation she just tried to shatter with one text. When I first met Jessica, she was magnetic, the kind of woman who walked into a room and pulled every pair of eyes without even trying. She was smart, funny, and full of ambition. She wanted to be a doctor. And when she talked about her dream, her eyes lit up in a way that made me believe it was already written in the stars. And me? I was ordinary. A software engineer with a decent salary, but nothing flashy. I didn't have the kind of glamour or charisma that Jessica carried so effortlessly. But what I did have was stability, drive, the willingness to build something brick by brick, even if no one noticed. When we started dating, it felt like opposites balancing each other out. She brought the energy. I brought the anchor. She had the dreams. I had the discipline. And slowly, those two worlds began to merge into one. By the time we got married, Jessica was deep into med school applications. She was drowning in prep courses, late-night study sessions, and constant stress. Money was tight, tighter than I admitted to anyone. But I made a decision I was going to carry us. So I did. I worked my regular 9 to 5 as a developer, but when most people clocked out, I logged back in. Freelance gigs, side contracts, debugging projects for clients across the world. My laptop became my second home. My weekends evaporated, and sleep was something I bartered with just to keep the bills paid. And every dollar I saved, every hour I worked past exhaustion, went to her tuition, to her books, to her dream. I never told her the full extent of it, not because I wanted credit, but because I thought that's what love was. You lift each other up. You sacrifice without keeping score. You make sure the other person's dream doesn't die, even if it means setting your own aside for a while. Jessica, she knew I worked hard, but I don't think she ever realized how hard. To her, money just seemed to appear, tuition was somehow handled, and she never had to question it. And in some ways, I enabled that. I let her float above the storm while I stood in the rain, making sure she never felt the cold. But here's the thing about sacrifices. When they're invisible, they're easy to take for granted. The cracks in our marriage didn't appear all at once. They started as little things. Snide comments about how I wasn't fun anymore. Complaints that I didn't post enough cute pictures of us online. Frustration that I didn't want to go out drinking after a 14-hour workday. At first, I brushed it off. Stress, I told myself. Med school is breaking her down. This is temporary. But the more she leaned into her world, the more she drifted from mine. Her classmates became her circle. Her professors became her mentors. And I slowly felt like an accessory to her life rather than a partner in it. Still, I kept going. Because I believed in her. Because I believed in us. What she never knew, what she couldn't have known, was the depth of the cost. The credit card balances I carefully rotated so she wouldn't see. The freelance contracts that bled me dry. The vacations I turned down. The dinners I skipped. The hobbies I let die. My 20s spent not building my dream, but funding hers. And through it all, I thought, one day she'll see. One day she'll understand. One day she'll look at me and realize that every white coat, every lecture, every step closer to her dream was possible because I held the ground beneath her feet steady. But that day never came. Instead, I got a text. I found your Reddit history. I'm disgusted. We're done. The irony? What she found wasn't some betrayal. It wasn't infidelity. It wasn't some double life. What she found was the truth. My posts, late at night, anonymous accounts, venting into the void, talking about the exhaustion, the sacrifices, the loneliness of carrying someone who didn't even realize they were being carried. It wasn't shameful. It was raw. It was me, putting words to the weight I'd been silently holding. And instead of seeing the sacrifice, she saw only judgment. She twisted it, made herself the victim, and tried to cut me off like a bad habit. But here's the thing about the truth. Once it's out, it can't be buried again. That night, as I replayed our years together in my head, something inside me shifted. For so long, I had been the quiet, dependable one, the man who worked, sacrificed, endured. But now I wasn't just her safety net. I was her reckoning. And while Jessica thought she was ending the story with that single text, she had no idea that she had just triggered the real beginning. Because soon reality was going to hit her, harder than she ever imagined. The morning after her message, the silence was deafening. No sound from the coffee machine, no clinking of her keys, no hurried footsteps. Just the hum of the fridge and the weight of her absence pressing against the walls. But my phone wasn't silent. The first text came at 7:02 a.m. Jessica, where's the tuition payment? It didn't go through. Did you forget? A second followed within minutes. Jessica, James, answer me. This is serious. I stared at the messages, almost amused. For months, she hadn't asked how the money appeared in her account. It was just there like magic. And now that the stream had dried up, panic set in. I didn't reply. Not yet. By noon, her tone shifted from frustration to desperation. Jessica, do you have any idea what this means? They'll kick me out. I'll lose everything I worked for. Jessica, James, please. I know we've been rocky, but don't ruin my future out of spite. That last line made me pause. Out of spite? No, this wasn't spite. This was a bill coming due. And for the first time, she was the one holding it. Later that day, Miranda, her best friend, reached out. "James, what are you doing?" she said, her voice sharp and full of accusation. "Jessica just called me in tears. You can't cut her off like this. She's drowning." I almost laughed. Cut her off? She had no idea. "Miranda," I said calmly, "did Jessica tell you who's been paying her tuition this whole time?" She said you were helping a little, but most of it was scholarships and loans. Why? Helping a little. That phrase hit me like a slap. Years of sleepless nights, thousands of lines of code written in exhaustion, and I was reduced to helping a little. "No," I said, "it wasn't scholarships. It wasn't loans. It was me, every cent." And she knew nothing because she never bothered to ask. There was silence on the other end of the line. A long one. Finally, Miranda muttered, "That can't be true." I hung up. She would find out soon enough. By evening, the real storm hit. Jessica's mother called me, her voice laced with venom. "How dare you abandon my daughter when she's so close to achieving her dream? Do you have any idea how cruel this is?" Cruel? I repeated. Cruel is watching me break my back to fund her education while she pretended I was just there. Cruel is her ignoring the sacrifices that kept her afloat. I didn't abandon her. I just stopped hiding the truth. She said you're trying to control her. Financial abuse. That's what this is. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "No," I said firmly. Abuse is pretending to be independent while secretly living off someone else's blood, sweat, and tears. Abuse is calling it control when the mask slips and the truth comes out. Her mother sputtered, then hung up, but the text didn't stop. Jessica kept flooding my phone, alternating between anger and pleading. "Jessica, James, I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this. Do you know what my classmates will say if they find out? Jessica, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean those things I said. Please, just cover the semester. I'll pay you back. Jessica, James, please, don't do this to me. You know how much this means." Every message was like a mirror reflecting her real fear, not losing me, but losing the future I had built for her. And here's where the shift began. For the first time, Jessica had to face the reality that her dream wasn't built on her independence or her brilliance alone. It was built on my sacrifice, on the hours I bled into a keyboard while she floated above it all. The truth hit her harder than she expected. She tried to twist it, of course. At one point, she claimed she knew all along, that she let me pay because it made me feel like a man, that I shouldn't act like a martyr for doing what a husband is supposed to do. But her words didn't land the way she hoped, because when people are desperate, their lies lose polish. And every excuse she threw out only proved what I already knew. She had no idea what it meant to sacrifice. The emotional tide was turning. The sympathy she expected from her friends began to crumble as the truth slipped out in pieces. Miranda stopped defending her so loudly. Her mother's calls grew less frequent. Even her classmates noticed her panic, the way she snapped at anyone who brought up tuition. And for the first time, Jessica wasn't untouchable. She was exposed. The foundation of her dream, the white coat, the stethoscope, the prestige, wasn't hers alone. It was ours. No, correction, it was mine. And now that I'd stepped back, she was standing on nothing. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I didn't rub it in. I just let the silence do the work. Because silence is powerful. Silence makes the truth echo louder. And as Jessica wrestled with the weight of that truth, I realized something. For years, she had lived in the comfort thinking I'd always be there, always covering the cracks. But now she was seeing what reality looked like without me holding it together. And reality was merciless. On the outside, my response was one word. Cool. Simple. Cold. Detached. But inside, it was war. My heart was pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. My hands were trembling, but I didn't let it show. The text wasn't just a message. It was a declaration of war, an announcement that the life I thought I had was over. I stared at my phone screen, my own reflection faintly staring back. I couldn't help but think, how long had this been going on? Was it just Vegas? Or had the betrayal been happening right under my nose, in plain sight, while I was too blind to see it? Every laugh, every late-night work shift, every unexplained distance suddenly replayed in my head like puzzle pieces snapping into place. The betrayal wasn't born in Vegas. Vegas was just the stage where it was proudly revealed. And yet, I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. Instead, I gave her nothing. Just one word. Just cool. Because sometimes silence cuts deeper than 1,000 angry words. Sometimes the calmest response is the loudest message. But in that silence, I was already plotting my next move. That one word, cool, wasn't the end. It was the beginning. She thought my silence meant defeat. She thought I was too broken, too numb to react. But what she didn't know was that silence has power. It gives you space to think, to observe, to plan. And that's exactly what I did. In the days that followed, I played the role she expected. Quiet, distant, almost invisible. She walked around like she had already won, parading her freedom, flaunting her betrayal without shame. Every move she made only fueled the storm brewing inside me. But instead of exploding, I absorbed it. Every smug smile, every careless lie. It all became fuel. I wasn't going to confront her in a screaming match. I wasn't going to beg her to explain. No, I was going to let her think she had broken me. Because the truth was, I was no longer fighting to save us. I was preparing to save myself. And when the time came, my silence would turn into something much louder than words. Something shifted inside me. The pain that once felt unbearable began to transform. It was no longer weakness. It was energy, raw and untamed, waiting to be used. Every memory of betrayal burned like fire, but instead of letting it consume me, I turned it into fuel. I stopped asking why. I stopped replaying her choices in my mind. Instead, I started focusing on me. I went to the gym harder than ever. I threw myself into my work with a new intensity. I cut off the noise, the gossip, the whispers about what she had done. People expected me to crumble, but I wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. And slowly, I started to see it. Control was slipping back into my hands. Not over her, not over the past, but over myself. She had taken my trust, but she would never take my strength. For the first time in weeks, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw someone rising. When the storm finally settled, I found myself standing in silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of peace. The papers were signed, the debts no longer mine to carry, and the chapter of my marriage was closed. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of someone else's chaos pressing down on me. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. Hatred would only keep me chained to the very past I fought so hard to escape. Instead, I let it all go. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, they were hers to carry, not mine. In the quiet of that new life, I found joy again, not in revenge, not in proving anyone wrong, but in living fully. I traveled, I laughed, I reconnected with old friends. And when love found me again, it wasn't rushed, it wasn't desperate. It was calm, real, and honest. The biggest lesson? Strength doesn't come from holding on. It comes from knowing when to let go. And I let go. And in that release, I found everything I thought I had lost: freedom, happiness, and myself.